The topic of this video is this interview tip will get you hired. So a part of my engineering degree is that we have to acquire internships to get hours of practical work experience in order to graduate. And after these internships, students start looking for graduate roles in their final year. And acquiring these positions has been a long and arduous journey, but it has given me a ton of interviewing experience. And in this post, I'll share with you this one interview tip that has worked wonders for me and has, allowed companies to hire me. So let me just share with you the first interview I ever had, and this was at a construction company. And interviewees were required to be at the office at 8 a.m. in the morning. And it was an assessment center that was scheduled to go from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And I couldn't sleep through the entire night before because I was just really nervous. It was my first interview and I didn't want to screw it up. So I showed up at the office on time and I was really sleepy and I was tired as. But everything went well until the one-on-one interview came around. And I was waiting for my name to be called. And after sitting for, 30 minutes waiting, for my interview, I decided to go use the bathroom. And as soon as I walked out, I saw the interviewer looking around, calling my name. And the interviewer just looked at me while, I just walked out of the bathroom, and it was awkward as. And not the best first impression. And in the interview, I didn't really handle the questions that well as well. Thinking back, I wasn't really prepared. So there are basic behavioral questions such as, describe a time you handled a conflict, and where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And I just said whatever sort of came to mind after I briefly rehearsed some basic answers the day before. And the interviewer could sort of sense that I was just saying random things to avoid an awkward silence that would sort of reveal my unprepared state. And at the end, the interviewer asked me if I had any questions for her, and I was just, my response was just, no. And basically about 2 years later, I came across a very important paradigm that altered the way I viewed my career. And this is the tip that I'm going to share to you. It was the idea that you must work in a role or career that is emotionally compelling for you. So basically, you want to be able to think to yourself, I love what I do for a living and I just happen to get paid for it. Because when you love the work that you do, you're going to do your work 1,000 times better than, the average clock puncher who's just trying to make it to the weekends to get wasted. The average clock puncher is just trying to get, the 9 to 5 hours done just so he can go home to, eat pizza and drink beers. Okay, so think about it. What are you doing? What are you spending the majority of your time doing? Right? That's going to be working. So if you hate your job, think about how that is going to affect every other area of your life. It's going to affect your well-being, your relationships, your mind, your spirit. You're not going to want to take care of yourself. You don't want to go to the gym most likely because, your job is, shit, okay? So that's why it's so important to work in a field that you love. As said by Mark Anthony, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So I know that it kind of sounds ideal. Sometimes you might just have to pay the bills. You might just have to put in the hours to get by. But, it's really important that as you're trying to get by, you got to look for what you really love to do and what you're really passionate about, and really try to align your career goals with what, you really want to do in life. And so with this new perspective of mine, I set out to find a career that had a really a real and true interest in. So I made a list of the companies that I really wanted to work at, and these companies had really good graduate programs and they had exciting projects to work on. And so I researched these companies in depth. And by the time the interview came around for these companies, I had a really strong understanding of the company's culture, the projects they were working on, and what they stood for. So what made them unique? What made them stand out from other companies? And I know that sounds kind of cliche, like, oh, why do you want to work for our company, or what makes us different? But when you really put in the time to understand a company and what they're all about, well, it just shows that you really took the time to research them, and it just shows that you're really interested. And it doesn't just come from you're making up this interest to get a job. It's because you actually really want to work at the company. That's what motivated you to understand all of these things about the company. So there's a fine difference there. And so basically in the interviews, I would ask the interviewer numerous questions, and I was just really curious, and I want to learn more about the company that I interviewed, because these companies, I really wanted to work there. So I had heaps of questions that I wanted to ask them. And a lot of these interviews, I asked so many questions, and they were really high quality questions. And in many interviews, the interviewer did like 70 to 80% of the talking. That's like completely different to your normal interview. There I was, the one being interviewed, and I was the one asking questions and listening to what the interviewer had to say. And, the interviewer was just talking my ear off, and it was a completely new experience for me. And basically, by the end of many interviews, I was almost always given entry into the next round of interviews, or, a few days later, I'd be given the job contract itself. So that's just the power of, seeking first to understand before, you seek to be understood. When the person you're talking to, when they feel like you really understand them and you really know what they're all about, and you're not caught up in your own sort of own world and your own thing, and that's when what you say has real impact. That's because it's aligned with what they're all about, and so it's about them, and it's not all about you. And that's what and when an interviewer finds someone like that, they're gonna think, like, okay, this guy is really interested, and he understands what our company is all about, so we're gonna hire him. So eventually I got an offer at a company that I really wanted to work at, and this company's mission statement and the work they did really fascinated me. And they could tell I wasn't just some ordinary guy that was looking to punch the clock. So they could sense that I really wanted to work at the company, and so they hired me. So that's it for this video. And just to summarize this, the topic of this video is, first take some time to think and reflect. What sort of work is, emotionally compelling and interesting to you? What sort of work, what sort of things do you do? When you do them, you just feel like time just flies, and you could do it for, a long time without being absolutely drained, and it's just really compelling for you. And so once you have this idea, well, then you got to find, companies that you would really want to work at, that's aligned with what you really want to do, and make sure you understand these companies thoroughly. And then thirdly, in the interview, ask many high quality questions whenever the opportunities present themselves. And this shows the interviewer that you're really interested, and and it comes from the desire to really understand the company. So yeah, that's it for this video, and thank you guys for watching.